The Attorney General of the United States was asked on Sunday whether the Justice Department will always act independently of the White House. He said no. That's Todd Blanche, and that's story number one. Then, Republican Senator Bill Cassidy says it is pretty evident that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. lied to him about the childhood vaccine schedule. Jared Kushner sits down with the leader of Hamas before flying on to see Benjamin Netanyahu. Ukraine launches one of the largest aerial attacks of the entire war, and at least 6 people are dead inside Russia. Federal authorities are reportedly circling a nonprofit sitting on a $100 million war chest, and an American aircraft carrier crew has now gone more than 260 days without a port call. 6 stories. One day. Every one of them about money and power. Stay to the end, because the last one is the one nobody is talking about. Start with the simplest question you can ask, the man who runs American law enforcement, and the answer he would not give. On Sunday, Attorney General Todd Blanche declined to commit to acting independently of President Donald Trump. His words, "There's a big difference between saying we will always do our job and investigate any case, and acting independently of the White House." No. Blanche did offer a caveat. He claimed the president has not asked him to prosecute specific individuals and said the president will not ask him to. Notice the shape of that. The guarantee he refused is structural. The assurance he gave is personal, and it rests entirely on his own account of private conversations. Why should this matter to your money? The Justice Department decides which corporate fraud cases get charged, which mergers get challenged, which executives and which banks face consequences, and which quietly do not. When that department is understood to operate at arm's length, legal risk is priced on evidence. When it isn't, every company, every investor, and every defendant has to start pricing something else entirely: proximity to power. Watch for 2 things next: whether senators press Blanche to put that commitment in writing, and whether specific cases begin moving in ways that track the president's public statements, reported by The Hill. A Republican senator just accused a sitting cabinet secretary of lying to him on national television. Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana said on Sunday that it is pretty evident that Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. broke his pledge not to attempt to change the childhood vaccine schedule. Cassidy was speaking on ABC News this week, discussing President Donald Trump's recent executive order seeking to alter that schedule, and he pointed directly at the guarantees he says Kennedy and the White House gave him. Understand why Cassidy specifically matters here? He is not a critic from the opposition party. He is a Republican who was publicly reassured, and he is now saying on the record that those reassurances did not hold. That is the kind of break that changes how confirmation promises are treated for years afterward. The practical stakes are not abstract. The childhood vaccine schedule is the backbone that insurers, pediatricians, schools, and state health departments build around. Change what is recommended, and you touch what gets covered, what gets stocked, what gets required, and what parents are told at the appointment. If you have children, this is a story about your next visit to the doctor. Watch whether Cassidy escalates from a Sunday show to a hearing room. Reported by The Hill. An American envoy sat down face-to-face with the leader of Hamas and then got on a plane to go see the Prime Minister of Israel. That is the day. Jared Kushner, serving as a United States envoy, met the Hamas leader in a push for a roadmap on Gaza, before heading on to meet Benjamin Netanyahu. The Associated Press also lists Gaza talks in Egypt among the day's Middle East headlines, alongside a visit by a top American commander to an aircraft carrier. Take the shuttle pattern seriously, because it tells you where this is. Direct contact with Hamas is not a routine diplomatic step for Washington, and the fact that it is happening in the same trip as a Netanyahu meeting suggests someone is trying to close a gap rather than manage one. A roadmap is a sequencing document. It is about who does what, in what order, and what happens if a step fails. For markets and for families, the transmission channel is familiar. Middle East escalation moves energy prices, shipping insurance, and defense spending. De-escalation moves them the other way, and reconstruction money follows fast. Watch what comes out of the Netanyahu meeting and whether either side puts anything in writing. Reported by the Associated Press. Ukraine has launched one of its largest aerial attacks of the entire war, and at least 6 people were killed in Russia. Hold on the phrase, one of the largest, because that is the detail that matters. not one of the deadliest, one of the largest. That is a statement about volume, about how many things Ukraine was able to put in the air at once, deep into another country, at this stage of a war that has already run for years. Attrition wars are ultimately manufacturing wars, and the side that can surge quantity is the side telling you something about its production and its supply lines. The reported death toll of at least 6 is inside Russia, which puts this in the category of strikes that carry political weight as well as military weight, because they are visible to Russian civilians rather than confined to a distant front. For everyone watching from outside, the exposure is economic. Long-range strikes touch energy infrastructure, refineries, and the logistics that set global fuel and grain prices, and they raise the temperature on every ceasefire conversation happening in parallel. Watch for Moscow's response in the next several days, and for whether the scale here becomes the new normal rather than the exception. Reported by the Associated Press via Google News. Follow the money on this one, because that is literally what investigators are reportedly doing. Federal authorities are said to be probing a United Kingdom-based organization over its financial dealings, an organization described as holding a war chest of roughly $100 million used to support anti-Israel causes. That reporting comes from Fox News in a piece by Anders Hagstrom published today, and it is important to say clearly what is not established. No charges have been described. The reporting is secondhand, attributed to another report, and an investigation is not a finding of wrongdoing. In the same Fox News item, the network also notes a separate matter. The Department of Justice has launched an investigation into New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani following allegations of unequal treatment of Jewish residents. Two different probes, one theme, which is federal scrutiny landing on money and on conduct tied to this conflict. Here is the practical stake for ordinary people. Nonprofit financial investigations tend to focus on where money originates, how it crosses borders, and whether the stated charitable purpose matches the actual spending. If donors cannot see that chain, they cannot know what their contribution funded. Watch for whether any agency confirms the probe on the record and for any response from the organization. Reported by Fox News. More than 260 days at sea without a port call. That is the number attached to the crew of the USS Abraham Lincoln, and the top American commander in the region went on the record about it. Admiral Brad Cooper, the commander of United States Central Command, touted the carrier's mental health record after that stretch, and said that concerns raised aboard the Lincoln months ago about food, about hot water, and other issues have been resolved. Fox News reported that, and also aired retired Navy Captain Brent Sadler discussing concerns about the length of the deployment, along with President Donald Trump's orders to use an older jet launching system aboard the ship. Sadler has separately warned that the United States Navy is stretched too thin. Put those pieces together, and you get the real story, which is not about one ship. It is about capacity. When a single carrier stays out that long without a break, it usually means there is nothing behind it to take its place. And that is a budget question, a shipbuilding question, and a recruitment question all at once. Every one of those is paid for by taxpayers. Watch whether the Lincoln gets relieved and whether Congress asks how a deployment ran this long. Reported by Fox News. The two threads to watch this week are whether anyone in the Senate forces Todd Blanche to put the word independent in writing, and whether the Kushner shuttle produces anything more concrete than a photograph. So here's the question for you. Should an attorney general be required to promise independence from the White House before being confirmed? Or is that promise meaningless either way? Tell me below. If this was useful, hit like, subscribe, and I will see you tomorrow.